Ja, herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe SI Talk und Vancouver, 1. Oktober. Wir sind nach wie vor bei der Discovery Group und die Discovery Group, habe ich ja schon vorher gesagt, hat mehrere Firmen da, unter anderem Bluestone Resources und der Dan ist bei mir, Ihr CEO und President. Und er wird mir jetzt die Company einfach mal vorstellen. Ist unser erstes Interview, also ich kenne die Company auch noch relativ wenig, aber das wird sich hoffentlich in den nächsten 10 Minuten aufklären. Then, thank you to have time. I say in my German introduction, it's our first interview.
Terrific
So I have
here.
no really clue about your company, but I hope I know much more in 10 minutes.
I hope so too.
So give us the 1 minute elevator pitch from
Sure,
Bluestone.
well, we can try and do that. So great to be here, and thanks for your time, Joe. So Bluestone Resources, we're actually a relatively new company. In fact, we've only really been in the current existence for about 2 years. We acquired the high-grade, low-sulfidation epithermal gold project from Goldcorp just over 2 years ago in the southeastern part of Guatemala. This is a project that is got a measured and indicated resource of 1.2 million ounces, another almost 400,000 ounces of inferred resource. We've at 10 grams per ton. It's had more than $200 million invested in it previously by Goldcorp. And we picked it up in 2017 for $18 million. We immediately launched a feasibility study, completed the feasibility study earlier this year that demonstrated that we could produce on average between 120 and 150,000 ounces of gold on a per annum basis at an all-in sustaining cost of less than $600 an ounce. And we're right now in the midst of putting our project financing together and all things being told, should be in the process of kicking off and building a gold mine in Guatemala next year that could be producing gold by the end of 2021.
Pooh. You do a good job on the elevator pitch.
I think we did that in about a minute.
Wow. But brings me up some question. Okay, understandable. Goldcorp sell this project, want out of Guatemala, blah, blah, blah. And you get it really cheap. Is there any country risk on it? Well, country risk, you have always country risks. Also in Canada,
That's
you
a
have
good way to
country.
put it.
But is this manageable?
Sure. Well, actually, previously I'd spent over 10 years with Oceana Gold, so one of the fastest growing really mid-tier companies out there, and a lot of the time actually in emerging markets as well. And so one of the things that I've been quite surprised about is, in fact, as I've got more into and spent more and more time in Guatemala, I've got more and more comfortable around it. Most of your listeners probably won't be familiar with the fact that, in fact, the Guatemalan quetzal has been the most stable currency in all of Latin America in the last 10 years. Yeah, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has continued to give it year on year very good sort of report cards in terms of how they manage their fiscal policy. The 10-year government bond rate, in fact, is about 30% lower than what a 10-year bond would be in Mexico or Brazil, for example. So from an economic perspective, Guatemala is very much pro-business, pro-foreign investment. We've had a national election in the country this year, and we've got a new government that will be coming in January. And again, President-elect Giammattei has been very firm around the pro-foreign investment, really foreign investment and really the economy. And so from that perspective, very comfortable around it. I think one of the advantages that we have is, in fact, that Goldcorp had really been in the country for more than 15 years. They'd operated the Marlin mine for a dozen years in Guatemala, something that was producing 250,000 ounces in first quartile costs, and so the geology is great. So this is an advanced project. It's a head start. It's not kind of walking in and doing the exploration and then really, over the next 10 to 15 years trying to develop it from grassroots. This is a project, as I said, that had more than $200 million invested in it. It's got underground infrastructure, surface infrastructure, water treatment plant, and really a network, and I think really a relationship with local communities and government stakeholders that is very much solidified.
What you must invest to can bring it in production?
So the capital and the feasibility study, which we did here earlier in January, showed that the capital to bring it in was just under $200 million US. So relatively modest. And in fact, an important statistic around this is that because of the high-grade nature of this ore body, as I said, it's 10 grams per ton. This project, in the first year of annual production, will generate more free cash flow than the market cap of the company today. And it comes down to the fact that it's got great margin, it's got great obviously grade. And so, using a gold price at $1,250, it had an IRR of 34% and a payback of 2 years. If you use today's gold price, that IRR approaches 50% and a payback of 1.5 years. So we're really excited about it. I think it's very rare that you have an opportunity to really step into something that has had this much of a head start, and really 15 years of work, and really it came down to the fact that it wasn't big enough for Goldcorp to focus on. The management team changed. The Marlin mine, which had been so successful for them, had really was running out of ore, and it was going into a care and maintenance phase, and the new management team decided that, look, we're not going to hang around for 100 to 150,000 ounces of gold. Let's see if we can divest it, and we're going to focus on other places. And effectively they did that, and it's been really a great opportunity for us.
All the permits in place?
So that was, again, one of the real attractions for this is in the fact it has its exploitation license. And so if you go to our website and have a look, you can actually see quite a bit of video and photos as well that actually shows the 3.5 kilometers of underground development. When you come down to visit and you're standing at the bottom of the mine, at the bottom of the underground development that has been done so far, again, primary development only, but about 40% of the ore body is already above your head. So it's quite unique. I mean, we've had really good support from shareholders. The Lundin family, which is a well-known family in the metals and mining space, is our largest shareholder. They have 35% of the company and have continued to be supportive really right from 2 years ago when this company launched and was able to acquire the asset through to present time. And so we've got a really good platform to move forward on, and as I said, next year we should be building one of the highest grade undeveloped gold projects out there today.
Is there exploration potential?
So this deposit, as I mentioned earlier, the geology is a low sulfidation epithermal, and so effectively what that is, Joe, is that the gold is in quartz veins, right? It's in white quartz veins, and the host rock is dark. And very similar geology to a mine that I actually had a previous experience with when I was at Oceana Gold. We acquired the Waihi mine in the North Island of New Zealand from Newmont. Now that mine originally was developed in 1988 with an 8-year mine life. This year, 2019, marks year 31 of it operating, and in fact it looks like it's going to go for at least another 10 years. So our focus has been just right within the deposit footprint, which is relatively small right now. Goldcorp did do quite a bit of exploration work to the north and out to the east, and definitely picked up similar type mineralization, but really had focused just on the deposit itself. And when we arrived in 2017, there hadn't been a geologist on the site for 4.5 years. And so our focus has really been on advancing that deposit, getting it through the feasibility study, and now with the project financing to get this project into production. But without a doubt, I mean, there's a lot of geologic endowment in this part of the world, and I think that once we get the mine up and going, then obviously we'll be able to start spreading a little bit further afield within the mining and exploration licenses that we have intact.
So to summarize this, you bought this project with over 200 million investment for 80 million 2 years ago.
18.
Yeah. 18. Permits are there. A lot of infrastructure is there. You're working now on the. You do the feasibility study. You're working now on the project financing. So the financing need under 200 million that you can bring it in production. And if everything running fine, 2021 you are in production.
By the end of 2021, I would think, yeah. Okay. It's about an 18-month sort of process, and so we're hopeful. We're already starting to do some of the basic engineering work now, and all things being equal, by the end of 2021 we should be commissioning the plant. Again, it's a relatively small plant as well. It's 3 hours down the Pan American Highway to get there, so infrastructure is great. And it's a 1,250 ton per day plant, so it's not in the top of a mountain, it's not in the middle of the jungles, and so it's a relatively straightforward build.
Is there local infrastructure there, so the roads and access to?
We're just off the Pan American Highway,
okay.
And so the road, you come into Guatemala City. Again, a lot of people, maybe your viewers haven't necessarily been to Guatemala before, but you arrive in Guatemala City. It's a fairly modern city. I mean, the streets are pretty clean. There's high rises, much like there is here in Vancouver today. And then the next morning you head off, and it's 2.5, 3 hours down a paved road, very similar to what we have here in Vancouver. And you arrive in the southeastern part of the country, and a little bit on a gravel road, and you're at the project. So.
Brings me to the shareholder structure. How many shares are outstanding?
Yep.
The biggest group, you say, already?
Yeah, so shares outstanding is about 83 million shares right now, so relatively tight share structure. The Lundin family is our largest holder, and so they have 35%. As we move down the list, CD Capital out of London has about 15%. Newmont Goldcorp now has about 4.5%, so that was originally a Goldcorp position, which is now sitting with Newmont. And when you add management in, I mean, you round that out, you're probably somewhere around 65% of the stock within four hands. So fairly tight shareholder structure. We've had really good support from some of our institutional investors as well, going back 2 years when the original financing was done to acquire the asset and put the funds in place to complete the feasibility study. And then obviously we've got a number of family offices and retail investors that are in places like Germany, Norway, Sweden, the Middle East, the United States, and of course here in Canada as well.
Last question to the financing, project financing. Which way you think? So royalty stream, debt, equity,
sure,
or combination of everything.
Yeah, so we're I think it will probably be to kind of shorten up the answer, it'll be a combination. We're quite well advanced right now on working with a number of parties on the project finance, effectively focusing on the project debt. Again, because of the good margins here, and the fact that our permits and approvals are effectively in place, we're seeing quite good terms from a debt perspective, and so we would see that the majority of the capital that we'll need to build this, we should be able to bring in through a project debt facility. However, we do also have discussions going with some of the streaming companies as well, and no doubt, I mean, there'll have to be some sort of equity component as well. And I said it's really helpful to have those sort of supportive shareholders that have really been backing us for the last 2 years and are going to back us for the next 2 years as we bring this asset into production, to backstop us, with regards to the equity. So it's a relatively small amount of capital when we think about in our space today what it costs to build these sorts of pieces of infrastructure. It's not very often you find $200 million build for a brand new mine, and then it's going to generate north of $100 million in free cash flow every year. Those are good paybacks, and that's whether you're in the gold business or you're making cars in Germany or Swiss chocolates. Those are good margins.
Wow. Thank you for the first introduction. Also das hört sich alles extrem spannend an. Also Sie haben eine Mine, also ein Projekt gekauft, muss man eigentlich sagen, von Goldcorp 2 Jahre zurück, wo Goldcorp 200 Millionen investiert haben Sie für 18 Millionen gekauft. Da sind 3,5 Kilometer Untergrundarbeiten drinnen. What was the resource?
So 1.2 million ounces of measured and indicated, and almost another 400,000 ounces in inferred. Yeah.
Also 1,2 Millionen in Measured and Indicated und 400.000 in Inferred. Also eigentlich eine schöne Ressource. Und wir haben auch dann sehr viel diskutiert über, gibt es Explorationspotenzial? Ja, gibt es, aber sie wollen halt einfach das jetzt mal in Produktion bringen. Sie haben dann, wie sie die vor 2 Jahren gekauft haben, eine Feasibility Study darauf gemacht. Die Kosten sind extrem niedrig. Die Kosten für die CapEx, also die CapEx sind ungefähr 200 Millionen. Sie sind jetzt mittendrin quasi in der Projektfinanzierung und er hofft, der Aufbau der Mine dauert ungefähr 18 Monate. Das heißt, sie hoffen, dass sie dann quasi in Produktion sind Ende 2021. Das heißt, sagen wir mal so, ein halbes Jahr wird die Finanzierung noch dauern. Wie kann die Finanzierung sein? Eine Kombination aus allem quasi, aus Debt mit Equity, aber es kann auch Royalty drinnen sein. Also das wird als Finanzierung dienen. Ich habe dann gesagt, wie ist die Infrastruktur dort? Er sagt, der Highway geht mehr oder weniger quasi vorbei. Natürlich gibt es dann noch Schotterstraßen, die dort hin ist und die müssen es natürlich auch dann ausbauen. Aber im Prinzip ist das alles kein Ding und die Infrastruktur ist sehr gut. Und wie gesagt, sie haben halt für 200, wo Goldcorp 200 Millionen investiert haben, nur 18 Millionen bezahlt. und die Explorationspotenzial ist riesig. Er sagt, man sieht es, das ist auch ein sehr starkes, es ist in Quarz-Venenstruktur. Das heißt, man sieht ja dort, wo das Erz drinnen ist, sieht man ja, weil es weiß ist, währenddessen das taube Gestein rundherum eher dunkel ist und dadurch kann man das sehr leicht natürlich auch trennen und man muss halt eigentlich quasi nur den Venen folgen und er hat früher bei Ozeanergold gearbeitet. Die kennen wir ja auch, die habe ich auch früher sehr stark verfolgt und das erinnert ihn sehr stark an eine Mine, die sie in Australien, in Neuseeland gekauft haben, die damals 88, glaube ich, konzipiert worden ist mit 8 Jahre Laufzeit und mittlerweile läuft die Mine noch immer und man glaubt, dass die noch weitere 10 Jahre hat, also an Minenzeit. Und ja, das klingt extrem spannend, vor allem dessen, weil wir natürlich im Goldzyklus drinnen sind. Wir sind in einem neuen Gold-Market, Goldboom, Gold-Cycle und da könnte das natürlich zu einem perfekten Zeitpunkt kommen, dieses Projekt. Politische Risiken habe ich angesprochen. Er sagt, sie sind einer zählt zu den stabilsten Ländern, die in Mittelamerika quasi sind. Und auch die Zinsen, die sie zahlen, sind deutlich weniger aus zum Beispiel Mexiko. Und das ist schon ein Indikator, wie sicher das Land ist, auch vom wirtschaftlichen Standpunkt her. Spannend, sollte man sich auf jeden Fall auf der Agenda halten. Also wenn die Projektfinanzierung natürlich hinbekommen haben, könnte natürlich auch ein gewisses Luftdurchatmen sein. Sie wissen ja meistens den Zyklus und dann kommt eigentlich nur der Projektaufbau und da kann es richtig spannend werden. Also das war vom Bluestone Resource, so it's a long day, im Vancouver 2019 Oktober. Tschüss und Baba. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe.